Welcome to Safari Live. My name is Brent Smith. I have Veerm on camera. We've just gone to check the last position where we had that male leopard on the sunrise safari. Unfortunately, a herd of elephants has come through there, probably chased him and also obliterated his tracks. So I left Herbert, our tracker, on foot in the drainage system, and he's going to be trying to find out where those tracks come out from, where the elephant herd passed. So he was just in these thickets off to my right here, but we're going to do a bigger loop around in case those elephants chased him a bit further. Now also, it's been a very cool, cold, if you like, day. So leopards could have moved during the day. They wouldn't have slept so much. He was also very hungry. He was in an area where there were lots of animals around. So we were hoping maybe he had some luck during this windy weather and he managed to catch himself a meal. Now, this male leopard used to be the dominant male here on Djuma when I started. And then Tingana moved in, it's the new dominant male. Now, as great as it was to see Mvula again, he does pose a threat to all leopard cubs in the area. He's now become a nomadic male. He's not a dispersal male, all sort of dispersal male. Dispersal male is a young male leopard who's pushed out and must go seek his own way. This is an old male leopard. There's a bit of argument about how old he is from the information I have. Some people say he's 11, some people say he's 13. When I look at him, I would say he's closer to 13. If you look at his ears being very ragged, he's not a young male. So, and leopard like that poses a very big danger to female leopards and their cubs. They pop out all over the place, they move around constantly, they're trying to avoid the dominant males. So it can be a bit of a testing time for the females, specifically because we've got Karula with cubs somewhere to the south of us here, and then he's just come through where Shadow's been seen with her cub. So it seems like he managed to pass through without bumping into Shadow. But obviously having him around where Karula hangs out, and of course he used to see a lot of Karula when he was the dominant male. If he happened to find those cubs, it's not a 100% chance, but it's very likely that he would eat them. But just in case, he could have gone any direction. So that's why we're going to do a big loop around, make sure his tracks don't pop out anywhere. He might have headed back towards the Buffelshoek waterhole. That's the closest water at the moment. While we continue to check, I'm sure you have wondered what the inside of a leopard looks like. Well, at least its head. So let's go have a look with James.
Now, many of you would have seen this already, of course, before. Let me just turn my sound off so I don't have to hear the slightly offensive sound of my own voice. What we're looking at here is a young male leopard skull. And I know some of you have seen this, but some of you won't have. And I just think it's quite interesting because we were talking about the age there of Mvula and how old he could or might be. And the SEM seems, like Brent says, some discrepancy between 11 and 13. My information certainly the way he looks to me indicates about a 13-year-old leopard. This leopard was much younger. Now, if you do, and hopefully we will see Mvula again fairly soon, if you look at the teeth here, these teeth are still very sharp. And although they're not nearly as sharp as, say, your house cat's, because his are much smaller, these are very sharp. And these are not the teeth that Mvula is going to have. Mvula will have much blunter teeth from years and years of use, obviously. And likewise, his carnassials, which are these teeth over here, they too will be much blunter than they are on this example of a young male leopard. And I just think it's quite a nice idea here to compare the difference between this skull and the hyena skull. And what we notice, if we look at them backwards, is a noticeably higher, what we call sagittal crest on the back of the hyena skull. Now that sagittal crest over there is where the muscles to chew attach, and there are still some pretty massive muscles there that attach on the leopard skull, but you can see they're much higher on the hyena because, of course, the hyena has got to drive home a much more powerful biting. It's got to drive home a much more powerful biting. I don't think that's English, but you get my drift. And so the leopard is much more, you know, it uses its jaws to ambush and then to kill. A hyena has to carry this enormously massive skull with this huge region of muscle in order for it to bite down and sort of cut, if you like, the bones that it's going to eat. Now, if you look at the two different kinds of teeth here, this is the hyena, this is the leopard, all right? Look at the sharpness of the carnassials on the leopard versus the hyena. The hyenas are flat, blunt chisels in comparison with the leopard, which of course has much sharper teeth, and that's because the leopard largely eats fresh meat. It does not have the adaptation to bite into big bones, whereas of course the hyena does with these blunter teeth. These of course would go immediately blunt were the leopard to try and bite into bones. So I think that's quite a nice comparison between the two. Now just remember, although we are sitting in the tent here, and we're certainly a lot more toasty warm than Brent, Leo, Smith and Jamie, you can ask questions of me in the tent, so please feel free to do so on #SafariLive. In the meantime, let's head back to Brent and get an update on what his leopard tracking is going. That is horrible.
Good news, no tracks coming through to the east. I was quite worried that he might have ducked through towards Torchwood, but I haven't seen any tracks yet. This is the last little spot where he might have headed east. I'll just check very carefully on the road here. Nice soft sand as well, so it makes life a little easier. Okay, so no tracks yet. There is a strong possibility he's still in this block here. When I refer to a block, I mean this big area between the roads. And this block's got a wonderful little river system in it, a little dry river system, lots of big trees, lots of great places for a leopard to hang out. So we've been chatting about the leopard dynamics at the moment, particularly with this male Mvula, who's a dispersal male, or nomadic male, and Tingana, who's the dominant male in this area. Safari Dean's asking, do I think Tingana will be close behind Mvula to chase him? Tingana actually passed through the property yesterday, so he's actually behind, Mvula's actually behind him, and he'll be listening to those male leopard vocalizations and trying to go to the area where he's least likely to run into one of the dominant males. Let's have a quick look on the road here. We got nothing here. All good signs so far that he hasn't left the area where we had him this morning, and that's really good because Herbert's there on foot, and it's often much easier to find these animals on foot. So you can take your time, follow the tracks carefully. So not so long ago there was a female leopard who was killed, or they suspect was bitten and then died from a snake bite. Christopher was wondering, wasn't this supposed to be Mvula? It wasn't. It was a female leopard called Kwatile. And in about March last year, we actually saw Mvula mating with that female. So I think that's where you might be getting a little bit confused, but Mvula looked pretty healthy this morning. He had a little bit of a limp, starting to sag on the back legs a bit, but that's hips starting to show a bit, but that's not uncommon in older leopards. he could have done a dog leg back up here. I'm going to check at the water hole quickly as well. So the last place I had him was probably 200 meters to the south of us here in that little river system, and he went into a spot that we couldn't take the vehicle in. It was too steep, too thick. Come on, kitty cat. Just really keeping my eyes peeled on the edge of this little river system as we drive. At the same time, making sure I don't miss tracks on the road. Also having a quick glance up into the trees. Maybe he had some success. And while I put all my attention on trying to find you guys a leopard, let's go see what Jamie's up to.
While Brent goes off in search of a spotted cat, I'm looking for a somewhat larger and more tawny of the big cat variety. So she's in here somewhere, and I'm going really nice and slowly, because the nice thing about new mothers, or at least the nice thing about them rather than the nice thing for them, when new leopard moms and lion moms, they get a bit tired of the suckling, mewling babies that they have to look after, and what they'll often do is leave the babies in the den site and move a little bit away from it to have a moment to rest and relax, kind of like a tired and overworked mom having a bit of space, maybe a bit of spa time.
Well, you're back with me. It seems like Jamie's got a few gremlins. So we've come out of where we last saw him. I saw my off-road tracks. I'm just checking now to make sure he hasn't doubled back on us and appeared on the road and headed towards the water hole. The windy, cold weather is probably quite good for him. We haven't spotted zebras. I haven't seen them yet. Oh, there they are. Well spotted. Now, how's that for him? So notice they're all around that large termite mound there. And they're taking advantage of some of the grass that's still growing on the edge of it. Looks like chloris grass. Not the most palatable of grasses, but it is a drought. One must not be too fussy. And zebras are not fussy feeders. They're bulk grazers, so they're not too picky about what they eat. Other species will be very, very picky about what they eat in terms of grass type. For example, wildebeest, very fussy. They only like short grass and they only like certain species. And the most fussy of eaters, the most fussy eaters of all, probably roan and sable in South Africa. And most of their diet consists of one species of love grass. Now imagine if you saw in black and white and you didn't see detail. What I'd like you to do is try squint your eyes when you're looking at the screen, and you can see how that black and white camouflage looks like it wouldn't really work for us. But if you imagine all the leaves not being green and everything being black and white, you'll see that that camouflage actually works quite well. We're going to keep checking for this male leopard, but while we leave one large bulk grazer, Jamie's got another.
I have several large bulk grazers, in this case a herd of probably close to 150 odd buffalo, including this female with a blind right eye. I don't quite know what happened to cause that. Maybe a cataract, maybe some kind of damage in her youth. Not all that uncommon to see buffalo with injured eyes. We're actually going to go. We're not going to stay with these buffalo now, and I'll explain to you exactly why. So before I disappeared off your screen, we were talking a bit about buffalo and the fact that they've walked all over this road and obscured the lioness's tracks. I think her den is in here, and I want to go and see how this situation plays out as these buffalo make their way in there. And it's not unheard of for buffalo to seek out and to either kill or injure lion cubs in their den site, kind of as a way of sort of like, well, we're going to, it's all right, buffalo, it's okay. You know, we'll kill you before you can get big and kill us, kind of deal. Now, I suspect that the lioness is on either side of this drainage line somewhere. I want to just go and investigate because these buffalo are coming straight in. If the mother is there, she will either stay still. Let's go over to James.
Now, we've come over here, of course, I was going to tell you a bit about herbivore dentition as we were talking all about those bulk grazers, but before we do that, just have a quick look here. Over my shoulder, Gert's going to show you what I've got under the microscope here. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? It's something called a lime green hawk moth, and that's its head. And this is a Mrs. lime green hawk moth. We know that from her antenna there, which are not combs. So you can see they're pretty straight and toothed, but a male, which has antenna specially designed to pick up pheromones that are exuded by a female like this, has got a long antenna with sort of a wide comb on it. So this is Mrs. Moth. Mrs. Moth is equally as beautiful as Mr. Moth, and I'll show you the whole picture of him now, or her, sorry. There she is. Isn't that an astonishing colour? Just amazing. And quite possibly a diurnal moth. I don't know much about their biology, if anything, but probably a diurnal moth given that colour. And probably tree-dwelling, you would think, given the amazing colour. So that is the lime green hawk moth. I'm going to put him back in, put her back in her jar. And you'll notice, just on my finger there, Gert, you'll notice how it's gone green, and that's from the scales. Now, although you looked like the moth had hair on it, they don't have hair on them. It's scales, and they come off as soon as you touch a moth, and many of you will know that, of course, because when the moth flaps over your face as you're sitting outside of an evening around a campfire and you do that sort of thing, you know that the moth leaves this kind of dustiness on you. It's not normally that pretty green colour. Now, I have in another jar over here a herbivore tooth. And this, I believe, to be a buffalo tooth. Let's just have a look at it. Now, a bulk grazer like a buffalo, in fact, most herbivores will have teeth like this. This particular buffalo was A, old, and B, I think had probably been at the toffees for a little while. But you can see there the different parts of the tooth. Now, that sort of, how do we describe it? Plain white, crystal white, clean white colour is the enamel, and inside that, of course, is the dentine. Now, a tooth like this will grow throughout the buffalo's life. It has to, because the buffalo is grinding its teeth together day after day after day after day. So it has to keep growing. And if you leave, for example, if domestic horses, which don't obviously use their teeth anything like wild animals like zebras would, you have to file their teeth because their teeth keep growing. And it's the same with the buffalo, especially the bulk grazers, which have to eat a huge amount of, as Brent was saying, not fussy about what they eat, but they swallow their things, re-chew them again and again and again and again. So they have to have very sophisticated teeth. Brent has got a really special bird to show you.
Wow, look at this. These are female red-headed weavers. but there's a whole host of species here, and I think it might add a few more birds to your bird list, but I'm pretty sure there's a snake here somewhere, judging from the bird's behavior. I haven't been able to spot the shape. Oh, there's a bushshrike there. Oh, he's popping down. There we go, look at that. Orange-breasted bushshrike by the looks of things. Very pretty bird. We've got orange-breasted bird. I'd come to the right a little bit. Oh, you see, oh, he's flying off to the back there. Oh, there he is. That's a brew shrike. So that's 3 species we've got so far. I'm just still trying to see. They're alarming like mad in the center. What have you spotted, Vim? Ah, wait, it's a little crombeck. 4 species. Now, let's go back to the center of this little knobthorn. A little bit to the right slightly, I think. Where's he hopping about? Now, the way they were behaving, there was a snake around. It might have moved off, but they were all alarming incessantly. And they're still alarming behind us. Let's just go back a little bit. Maybe there's a snake that's moving along the ground. No, I can't see anything. Then we got 4 species in there. There were about 7. Okay, well, something around here. And sometimes you'll find the little birds alarming like that for a leopard. But in this case, I just think from the behavior, it was a snake. Just hang on 1 second. I'm gonna have one last quick look. But nope, can't see anything. So from the tiny little birds, let's go back to Jamie on those large bovids.
Brian and myself find ourselves completely surrounded by our large bovids, making their way slowly through and over the crossing of the Mulwati drainage line. And there are some really, really interesting buffalo. Unfortunately, the one that I was interested in showing you, or really wanted to show you, has now disappeared off into the bushes. There's a young male buffalo with, I think, the biggest set of horns I have ever seen of a buffalo of that age. He's going to be an absolute monster when he grows older. Enormous. The nice thing about us sitting here is that we get to view these animals while they're perfectly relaxed, because they've decided to come to us rather than the other way around. We just had to park off and wait for them to come past. The good news is, for those of you who are worrying, is I haven't seen any signs of a frantic lioness rushing out of the area. I haven't seen or heard any buffalo panic. It doesn't look as though they've even smelt lion at this point. But perhaps she's moved her den a little bit further to the north of this drainage line. I think they would have given us some kind of indication that they had found her. Everybody looks perfectly relaxed and perfectly calm. I said about 150. I'm going to up the estimate to about 200 buffalo that have just walked past. And bulls and cows of all ages, including a couple of little stragglers coming through at the back. Might need to reposition for you to see them, but we've got a view of them so far. They are going into the one, they're going further north than I expected to, which is the other area where I thought she might have had a den site. We don't know exactly for certain. But We'll just do a nice loop around this area and just keep checking in case she has been pushed out. Is a very, very young calf. One of the last of this season, I would say. Yes, little one, with your cute horns. Off you go, into the safety of the herd. It doesn't pay to be a straggler out here. And that's just like that. A herd of 200-odd buffalo slowly melting into the bush. The females very clearly distinguishable from the males, with their tufts of hair in between their horns. Males having much more solid horn bases, or bosses, as they are known. There's some hip bones showing, some ribs showing. Starting to feel the effects of the drought and the lack of the food of the dry season, which you've seen. We've stopped quite a few times and had a look at what little grass there is left for these bulk grazers to eat. So while they head off and struggle along to see if they can find their next meal, let's find out what James is up to in the tent.
I'm not struggling, of course, because I'm warm here in our toasty little tent, but we're going to try something new now. As many of you will know, I am the world's worst artist, but that has not stopped me making valiant attempts at art at various stages. Now, we had a question from Debbie in Vancouver about the geology of the area, so I'm going to try and give you a very quick idea of what the geology of the area looks like. And I'm going to do the whole Kruger Park, and then we'll do a little section on the Sabi Sands. So, here we go. The Kruger Park basically looks like this, with a boot at the end of it. Looks like something like that. Yeah, that's a brilliant description, don't you think? Gert? Yes? It's magnificent, isn't it? The Sabi Sands sits over here. The Timbavati sort of over around there, and the Manyeleti in the middle. That's absolutely appalling. It's proportionately completely off whack. Wait 1 second, everyone. Where's my tissue gone? I have to do this again. Okay. Okay. Sabi Sands, actually probably like that. Manyeleti, thin piece there. Timbavati over there. That's all you need to know. So this is the KNP. Now, Debbie, this is largely granite. And over here, we're going to draw the Drakensberg Mountains. They pretty much come down here like that. And of course, because we're looking at it from the top, I'm not going to try and draw peaks. We'll just do this. That means mountain, everybody. Right? Mountains. And then over here we have some more mountains, but these ones are smaller, as you can see from my brilliant representation of smaller mountains. There we go. And now we will get some more colors. So this is the Drakensberg here, D-Berg. These ones are called the Lobombo Mountains. Okay, and between the two is what we call the Lowveld. Now most of this is granite. The Drakensberg, Debbie, is made of basalt. This is largely granite. Right, and the Lobombo Mountains are something called rhyolite. Okay, and obviously this makes different kinds of vegetation wherever you happen to be. So if you go into the far eastern sectors of the Kruger National Park, you will see different kinds of vegetation. Now that's the basic idea of what happens here. It's very basic. So let me just quickly zoom in now to the Sabi Sand, and you'll get an idea of what it is here. Now it's different here because, or at least it's not different on Djuma. On Djuma, it's entirely granite. There's nothing else here, and that's why the vegetation looks quite similar over here. But the whole Sabi Sands, which looks something like like that, that's actually not too bad. Not a bad guess there. Sand River coming down through here, Sabi River coming down through here, and they meet somewhere over there. We won't worry about that particular section. But this northern section, Djuma, sits about... that's Buffelshoek, so Djuma's about there, right? That's where we are. And, sorry, Burmy, you want to know where north, south, east, west is. There's north. Okay, south down here, obviously west here, east here. This amazingly terrible drawing. Nkoro cheetah plains, so I'm going to put CP here, and we're going to have Arathusa here. Okay, that is a very sort of cartoon rendition of where we are. That's all granite, every piece of it here. When you come all the way down to the south here, sort of beyond this section here, you get what we call gabbro. And many of you, of course, know or will think of Africa as having these large, vast open clearings like the Serengeti in Kenya. Well, there aren't those sorts of clearings out here, but in the gabbros, there do tend to be a lot more open clearings, very long grass, dominated by a really good grazing grass called red grass or Themeda triandra, and knobthorn trees, which you'll all be very familiar with. The granite, which extends all the way up here, and then the gabbros do start again as you go into the Manyeleti, but basically that's how it looks here in the Sabi sand. There is one noticeable exception, of course, here on Cheetah Plains at the southern end, just there, that goes into Mala Mala. And that noticeable exception is a giant sodic area where the geology is probably still granite, but there's some kind of underground geological formation that allows for those big clearings to maintain because the area is so sodic. There's a lot of sodium and clay in the soil. So Debbie, that's the basic idea of the geology. Okay, let's head across to Brent and get an update from him.
We've done another loop around the same area now, the zebra a bit closer to the road, as well as some waterbuck. You can see the area they're all feeding on at the moment. It's a little bit more open than the rest of the bush. It's on the edge of the thickets coming down from the top. So it is a seep line, so the grass species they're going to be better. I think I'm just going to move forward a little bit. Might get a better view. Big bird. Big bird. We like big birds. It's a very... Oh, it's African hawk eagles. There's a pair of them. Next one should be coming through. There we go. Nice for them. African hawk eagles. Quite often we see them in pairs, and they actually nest on the next road over. And one of my favorite bird species, great hunters of francolin and guinea fowl and squirrels. What is that zebra doing? Is he having a scratch? You see him? I mean, having a good scratch against the stump there. Getting rid of some itchy ticks, I'm sure. Changing position slightly. Oh, that looks good. It's really working that stump. Of course, most animals are not blessed with opposable thumbs and fingers. So to have a scratch, you've got to find the closest rough object, maybe not too rough, that you can rub against. It all depends on how thick your skin is. So different animals have different rubbing posts. Well, it's just swap sides, rubbing the other side now. So I just had a chat to Herb on the radio, who's trying to find Mvula for us. He's walking down here. Now, he said, unfortunately, the elephants have literally obliterated all the tracks. So he's going to try go back to where we last saw him and then try figure out from there. So what we're going to do, in case he continued south, we're going to head down towards the Mawati River. Oh, but before we do that, there we go. Look at that little bundle of fluffy cuteness. Baby waterbuck. And we see the white rings on their bottom. I know a lot of our regular viewers will know exactly what that's for, but that's a following mechanism, so they're able to follow each other through the thick bush. There's a male at the back. See his big horns. And all the animals are going to be very alert today in this windy weather. So from one male antelope to another with Jamie.
Oh dear, it seems as though you were with us a bit sooner than I realized for some unknown reason. Our communications went a little bit strange there. Nevertheless, we have two posturing male impala nibbling away at the leaves. And it's fascinating to watch them at this point because the hormones are starting to slow down at the end of their breeding season. They're not rushing about as madly as they were. But at the same time, every time a male runs past another, they get a bit of a fright and immediately go into battle mode. And just before you came across to us, the two of them locked horns, and one of them actually was thrown to the ground in front of the car. Got up very quickly and disentangled themselves very quickly. There are no females around here for them to fight, so it's more just a residual hormonal outburst that they had. A little bit of residual aggression towards each other. Let's go forward a little bit and see if we can't get a view of the second impala as well. So I've done a double check, just to let you know what I've been up to. I've been doing a double check of the area around where the buffalo came through, past where we suspect that lioness's den site is. And there was no sign of any action, no sign of any tracks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on for now and then make my way back there towards the evening time to see if she might be on her way out to find her sisters on Torchwood, by the sounds of things. Here we go, keeping a modest distance from each other. I was looking at photos of an antelope called a Geranook or a Geranook, depending on where you are and how you pronounce it. It's an antelope that you get up towards Somalia and the Eastern African, sort of Central and East African regions, that so very clearly came from an impala in some, or at least shares an ancestor with an impala, that it's absolutely phenomenal. And what this antelope looks like is if you picture this impala, and then with a really, really stretched neck and really, really stretched legs. And that is what this particular antelope looks like. Now, I don't happen to have a picture of it, but Brent might be able to show you one when you head back onto his vehicle. You can see what I mean about what a fascinating creature it is, and why I say that it is so clear that it shares some kind of ancestor with our impala that we have here. And sometimes I wish we could trace back the history and go back in time and just see the way in which things worked, because there's quite a distance between our impala, physical difference I mean, physical distance. There's a difference between distance between our impala and where this particular species of antelope roams. What it does is it actually stands on its back legs and nibbles away at the leaves. It's phenomenal to see. Yeah. I think our impala are going to disappear off, so I think that we should continue on and see what we can see. I think there's a chance that if your questions are coming through to me, I might not be hearing them, so forgive me. I'm not ignoring you. On the subject of impala skulls, or impala, James has an impala skull to show you.
Here it is, everybody, an impala skull. It's a very dainty little piece of equipment, is the impala's skull. And what interests me so much about this, of course, is that impala do a great deal of fighting just before this time of the year. So around about April and May, they have a horrible time with each other. Some of them are still boxing each other, but they're wasting their time because those that are pregnant, female-wise, of course, are indeed already pregnant. Now, if you look at the front side of the skull here, it looks so very dainty, I always think, and yet impala smash each other with such an incredible force when they're fighting that I do wonder how it is that they don't destroy their brains and how they don't sort of concuss themselves completely. And the skull is not thick here. It's only that thick, but that's solid bone. And it's much thicker than your skull at the front of the head. So if you were to sort of knock your head, I think at anything like the velocity and force with which the impala smash each other's heads, I think our skulls would probably crack up. What really interests me is how they manage not to concuss themselves. James Dungan, it's an interesting one, and I don't know the answer. You want to know which horns of antelope did humans use as weapons? You know, James, in this particular area, I don't think they did use horns as weapons, because once the animal dies, of course, this keratin sheath will eventually start to rot. And so it's actually not that strong. It will snap and break fairly soon after the animal dies if it's not fed with nutrients. Underneath there is bone, but bone is brittle. You know, if bone dries and it is no longer living, then it becomes very brittle. But what they did used to use, of course, before the advent of the Iron Age, was something like this. Now, this is called a hand axe, and you know, you can read books and books and books, not many of which I've read, about what these things were used for and who built them and how they were built. No one really knows for sure, but you can be very sure that although this was probably very effective at crushing roots to eat, I think that was definitely a major function of something like this hand axe. It was probably also just as effective as for bludgeoning someone to death. And so I think you'll find that this was a sort of a knife, a fork, a spoon, and also an axe, and possibly also a defensive weapon. I mean, if you tie a piece of stick to this, it becomes a very effective kind of axe. No longer a hand axe, but very effective axe. And so I think far from using these sorts of bones, I think people probably used this sort of thing, and they eventually, of course, became spears, much more refined than this particular one. And then with the advent of the Iron Age, and Iron Age people have been living in this area for probably 1,500 years. And so with the advent of the Iron Age, of course, well, then spears were the things that people wanted to use rather than stones and bones to attack each other with. Let's, before I tongue-tie myself completely, let's head across to Brent Leo Smith and find out what he has to tell you.
We are still in search of that male leopard. I'm going to check down towards the Mawati River, see if he maybe wasn't pushed further to the south by those elephants. But wasn't that hand axe incredible and massive? And we'll chat about it a little bit later, because I hear Jamie's got an animal with a heartbeat.
We do indeed have a heartbeat hiding behind the trees. In this case, one of my absolute favorite antelope, a bushbuck. As you can see, a little bit panicked by our prolonged attention of her hiding spot. And just like that, off she goes in very typical bushbuck fashion, trying to hide herself as deeply in the dense vegetation as possible. And that bushbuck has given us a really clear indication of what most of the animals are doing on a day like today. And that is hiding away wherever they can, trying to shelter from the wind. And in this case, a drainage line or a river system, you can sort of clearly see where rivers would have flown through, or at least have hewn away at the soil. And it provides a perfect spot to shelter from the wind. If you're a leopard, it provides a perfect spot to come and hunt. And if you're a lioness, it provides a perfect place for a den site. Well, speaking of our various little antelope, fox hat, you were wondering about whether or not we have a springbuck in South Africa, and the answer is, in the Sabi Sand. The answer is we don't in the Sabi Sand, we do in South Africa. They are more of an arid species, so they essentially fill the same ecological niche as something like an impala. They're quite a similar size, just a little bit smaller, but they're more towards the western and northwestern parts of this country, and then actually right down towards the Karoo as well, around the area around Cape Town. They're amazing animals. They look very similar sort of structure to an impala, but with that very thick black stripe that runs along the side. And their name comes from a very particular type of prancing that they do, a type of stotting. Now, stotting antelope do when they want to show you how energetic they are. It's the equivalent of, I don't know, what would be a good example? Perhaps boys doing Nyala dance around fireside chat, or possibly sprinting along quarantine. Either way, that's the antelope equivalent, is stotting. And springbuck do something known as pronking, which is where they arch their back right up and draw their legs together and spring in a kind of very, very peculiar, very fascinating stride. And it's their way of basically saying to everything else, I'm incredibly healthy, I'm nice and strong, look how high I can jump, don't even bother trying to hunt and catch me. Unlike our bushbuck that pull disappearing acts, as she has done. Camp bushbuck that live around, I can't remember what he called it now. There are several that hang out around the windows. Over to Brent for an update on his search.
We're on our way down towards the Mwati River. I just wanted to check on the southern side of that little river system that he was in. Maybe he kept on going down it. And I was just saying that hand axe James had is amazing. Now, early Stone Age. Imagine how powerful you would have had to have been to use that to break things open. And that particular hand axe is from not too far away from here. Probably about 60 kilometers or so. My dad found it while he was out walking. It's a sort of a family hobby, looking for different stone tools and fossils and things. What you got? Oh, there we go. There's the hawk eagles that flew over us earlier. Oh, beautiful. A pair of African hawk eagles. Oh, and you can hear there's a grey-headed bushwhacker who's not happy with them in the presence. That. Oh, and there's some more birds that are not happy with them, landing around them. White helmet shrikes. They're basically going to harass them. Look at that. Choo! Now, there's no chance that these eagles will be able to catch those little birds. They're just too fast. But they don't like any predators hanging about where they are. I don't know, Vim, can you pick up that? Woo, woo. Can't really hear it, but those beautiful, beautiful grey-headed bush shrikes that are alarm calling. I'm trying to see if I can get a spot one of them. Actually, I think I've got their call. They're probably going to batten down the hatches for the evening, the hawk eagles. Unless they see an unsuspecting Franklin. I'm just going to move a little bit forward. I want to see if we can spot one of these bush shrikes. So I'm just listening. There's a pair of them calling. And Vim's going to keep looking at those beautiful hawk eagles, and I'll try to spot that little bit of movement. Oh, there he flew. Damn it. Oh, he flew off the... They flew off into the thicket channel. Let's see if we can get forward. Now, to see both the grey-headed and the orange-breasted in one game drive, I think that'll be a little bit of a birding coup for getting them on camera. Oh no, it sounds like they've moved further away. Well, we tried. Really? You got him. Damn, thinks he might have spotted them. Yes, well done, Vim. Oh no, it's another orange-breasted. But he's got something. So we thought we had that. So we were looking for the grey-headed, but we got the orange-breasted. Well spotted, Vim. So actually, it gives me an idea. So both of them have an orange breast and a grey head, which makes them quite confusing with the naming. But the grey-headed's a far more robust bird. And it's much bigger beak. It's a bigger bushshrike. And just quickly 1, 2. Okay, so there's the one we've just seen, the orange-breasted bushshrike, up the top there, where my thumb is. And we can see that yellow stripe quite distinctly there in that. And then if we come down to the bottom here, there's the grey-headed bushshrike, who's also got an orange breast and a grey head, but you can see he's got a yellow eye, much bigger. And then the orange-breasted bushshrike. Now the real coup to catch, if we ever got lucky enough to see this one, this would be a really awesome bird to see here, the black-fronted bushshrike. I have seen them in the Timbavati. I've never seen them in the Sabi Sands. You can see where they occur. Very, very rare to find them. But I have seen them not too far from here, but it would be quite strange if we did find one. It's one to aspire to. Well, pretty good birds for a cold, windy day. Andreen is wondering about the bird we saw in the beginning. Can I give its name? It was an orange-breasted bushshrike. We also saw a brew shrike. I think that could be the one, B-R-U. They've got a call that sounds like an old-school telephone ringing. And then what else did we see? There was a little crombeck. And I'm not sure what. We had 4 species managed to get on camera there. Bushreich, Crombeck, Brew. Do you remember what the 4th was, Vim? Oh, I can't remember now. And we're on the edge of this. Ah, there we go. Female red-headed weaver was the other one. Now, I'm not quite sure what's happening in the tent, apart from the fact that James is nice and cozy with all his lights keeping him warm. So I think he's doing a bit of exercise with a large piece of the earth.
We are not nice and cozy, everybody. We're stoutly out exploring the wilderness, not, well, about 2 meters from the tent. Now, Laura in Oregon, you were wondering about the soil, and you said, why is it so infertile, and couldn't we have earthworms to help us here? Well, Laura, if you have a look down here, I'm going to sit down just to show you that I am, you know, still in touch with the earth. I haven't totally been taken over by the comforts of the tent. This soil here, now let me just bring it closer, of course, because we've been replaced, Gert's been replaced on camera by Hoppy Pussfoot here, and he's fairly immobile. There we go, Hoppy. Do you see the soil? Now, Laura, what you can see by this is that there's not a lot of organic material in it. You can see that it's very kind of pale, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it's nutrient poor, but in this case it is. And by saying that the soil of the Lowveld is nutrient poor, it means basically that there's been so little recent volcanic activity in this area that there's not much in the way of new minerals. So when soil like this is exposed to the elements for millennia, eventually most of the nutrients will leach out of it. The clay will leach down and it becomes poor. Now, in order to revitalize, if you like, the soil, basically you have to have the presence of volcanic activity, and so ash, which would bring up minerals from the bottom of the surface, you'd bring up minerals from the underneath the earth. I'm getting totally tongue-tied here. Bring up minerals from the subsurface of the earth onto the ground, and that would then provide you with fertile soils. Now, all over Southeast Asia, that's what you have. And it's not surprising, therefore, that there are so many more people living there than there are in Africa. And the other way that you get sort of fertility into soils is with organic material. So in a rainforest area, you will have a top surface of soil that is very nutrient rich, but underneath that, it's often very nutrient poor because of the amount of rain that there is in a rainforest. So in an area like this, you do not have a great deal of fertility, and it means that the animals have adapted to living without these sorts of fertile lands, but it does mean that the people outside have to, it's very difficult to grow food here, and it's very difficult to grow sort of nutrient-rich food. So you can grow spinach quite happily, but that spinach will be calcium poor, it will be iron poor if you don't fertilize the soil with it. And I think that's quite interesting, because what it does mean is that African populations have almost universally remained poorer than, or certainly lower than most other populations around the world, certainly than in Asia, with the notable exception, of course, of Rwanda and Burundi and the sort of eastern sections of the Democratic Republic of Congo. In those mountains, there are active volcanoes, or recently active volcanoes, and it's no surprise at all that those are the most densely populated areas in all of Africa. Out here, however, in the Lowveld especially, this was an ancient sea many thousands of years ago, in fact millions of years ago, and since then there's been no volcanic activity at all, and so the soil has been leaching for millennia, and that's why it's just not very nutrient rich. And that is my story of the soil, Laura. Now, let's pop back inside the tent. Come, Hoppy, don't fall over yourself. Be careful, there's a guy rope there. If the picture does shake slightly, it's because Hoppy is hopping. That's what he does. I wanted to show you this amazing bone that I picked up. Now, the bone itself was belonged to a buffalo. Well, it's 2 bones, isn't it? And what it is the humerus, not the humerus. I cannot get this right in my head. Anyway, it's the leg bone. This is the femur of the buffalo, and this is the tibia, right? And what's interesting to me about this is this articulation. You see how the bone articulates in its ball and socket? And I'm just going to turn it around like that. And there, that sort of piece of stinky flesh that you can see, that's not stinky at all anymore, that's a ligament, okay? You see it holding together? That's what holds your bones together. A ligament just like that one, and very sinewy, not very good to eat, of course, except for maybe 1 or 2 vultures and a couple of insects, and that's the last thing to go. And it just shows you how tough ligaments are, because they have to hold your bones together. And it's why a ligament injury, if you ever have one, in your knee or your ankle specifically, is so tremendously painful. Just one last thing on this. This is the equivalent of your ankle joint, okay? So it's the back leg. If you imagine a whole buffalo, this is its back leg, okay? And that's the sort of ankle joint. That's the kind of fetlock, what you'd call on a horse. That's the fetlock. And so that's the ankle joint. And you can see how totally different it is from the ankle joint of a human being. This, yes, you see, so I've got this all mixed up again. This basically is an amalgamation of the tarsal joints in your foot, which I think is absolutely incredible. I'm going to get back to you. At least I'm going to explain a bit more about that when we next come back to the tent. But in the meantime, I think Brent Leo Smith is appropriately... Oh, he's not in the boat today, is he? No, he's in Rusty, but he is having a little boat ride. Let's go and find out what he's doing.
It's actually so bumpy here. There have been so many elephants. The road is actually quite bumpy. We have to go quite slowly. Don't rattle our false teeth out. Herbert's still trying to find Mvula. While he does that, I think we're probably going to try and find the elephants that might have chased him. And so we're on their tracks at the moment. And you can see here, and we can feel it now. Watch this. Normally you get into the ruts here and the car just stays. You don't even have to use the steering wheel. But now the elephants, there have been so many elephants here. And the car's wandering around. Of course, it's sometimes quite a harsh environment out here in the bush, and a male will kill a competitor's babies to try and get the female to come into estrus. We're talking about the carnivores mostly. Now, Annie in British Columbia is wondering, are there any male predators that might accept the offspring of another male? In very rare circumstances, certain animals will. Now, one animal that does all the time, but there's sort of a loophole, is cheetah. Now, male cheetah coalitions, only the dominant male in the coalition will do any mating. So, but it's a direct relation to the other members of the coalition. They're almost always brothers. So it doesn't really count. And if they come across a female who's got cubs and they haven't mated with her, they will also, not always, that's the cheetah, a funny one, not always, but sometimes they will kill the cubs. And I'm just trying to think, out of the bigger predators, not really, they don't really accept other males' babies within their territory. Of course, they're programmed, evolved to pass on their genetic code, so that's what they're doing. And if they kill the babies, then it immediately causes the female to come into estrus. Hang on, I've heard a pretty little bird here. I can hear them calling, tink, 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 tink. Let's see if we can get a visual of them. Psh, 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 psh. That normally causes some of the little birds to pop out.
Not the yoke up there.
Nope, but we can get that one. Them spotted a different bird. Oh, he flew. That was a grey-headed sparrow. Let's just go forward a little bit. I'm looking for a little flycatcher. I can hear them somewhere in here. Oh, there's a couple of different bird species if we go through. Oh, one. It was a white helmet shrike, but go back into that. Oh, there we go. Those are the same birds that were bombing the hawk eagles earlier. Okay, well, the Battises are too far away. We'll keep going. Birding in this weather is quite challenging. Hello, Gracie. Gracie is a SafariLIVE regular and is 8 years old. Gracie would like to know, are the cinnamon bun birds all gone? Now, if you're wondering what a cinnamon bun bird is, it's a cinnamon-breasted bunting. They're not all gone, Gracie. They are around, but I haven't seen one in a while. But I know they're your favorite, Gracie, so I'll show you a picture just so you don't forget what they look like. Here we go. There we go. That's the cinnamon bun bird or a cinnamon-breasted bunting. That is the male. So they are around. We could see them any time. You can see that dark green is where they will be for the majority of the year, but the light green, they spread out during the winter months. So they might have spread out a bit, looking for more to eat because of the drought, but I'm sure there's still some around within our Traverse area. One of the last times I actually saw Mvula, when he was still the dominant male leopard in this area, was right here during Big Cat Week. I saw him on foot and he growled at me, naughty leopard. Now, a very interesting question posed by Michelle in New Jersey. She's sounding, are we sure Krula didn't mate with Mvula when he was hanging around late last fall? I think it was the beginning of summer for us. She might have, but there would have been no reason for her to mate with him when he's no longer the dominant. And the other thing, even if those are his cubs, he's in that stage of his life where he'll take a meal wherever he can get it. So eating a cub would be a nice, easy source of protein for him. So it's unlikely. It's unlikely that he fathered those cubs. There's always a small possibility. But with male leopards at that phase of their life, they are well-known cub killers and cub eaters. Now, as you can see, this is now twin dams, and it's been fixed up and excavated to become quite an impressive spot. It'd be lovely once there's some water in it. I think, Vim, you should get your skateboard.
That's what I was thinking.
You can have a skateboard rink in here. Whee! And then you can do a jump over there. You need an off-road skateboard.
I think it's sandboarding.
Sandboarding. Yes, that's an idea.
Matter of fact, we should go tomorrow.
Yes, we should come tomorrow, definitely, after sunrise safari. There's some impala boys hanging around the new dam. Maybe they gallop up and down and do tricks when we're not looking. I think they're more concerned with staying alive at the moment. You can see, not very relaxed with the wind scampering off. Oh, well, we're going to continue our search for those elephants. And while we do that, let's go to the warm and toasty James Henry inside the tent.
As with yesterday, he really can't get over the fact that we are nice and warm over here. Well, you know, that's just how it goes. Some people are destined to drive around staring at the sand in the freezing cold, and others are destined to be in the tent, warm and happy, and some Hoppy. Hoppy just fell over the camera, everybody. We had to put it all back together. Anyway, now, I just want to go through this again because I got it wrong again. I'm not a skeletal anatomist, you see. This is the tibia. Now, the tibia is the equivalent of your calf bone, which in my case is very insubstantial. But Hoppy, of course, has a calf the size of Bournemouth. Don't know why I decided Bournemouth was the correct thing to say, but it's very big. Now, so that's what this bone is. Now, it's positioned on the buffalo at the top of the leg, though. Then, you have got inside your foot, you've got a number of different bones. You've got things called tarsals and metatarsal bones. And the metatarsals are the long bits that eventually get to your toes. And on the buffalo, they are fused into this bone here. Right? And I think that's absolutely incredible. So those 5 metatarsal bones that you have in your foot are fused into this one bone in the buffalo, and indeed in just about every single 4-legged animal. And then, look over here, that's your heel. That's the same thing. It's called a I've forgotten it again. It's the heel. That's all you need to know. That's the heel. All right? So that's the buffalo. Now, quite coincidentally, we have the same sized bone, or the same kind of bone, of the elephant version. Now, this I'm going to go with elephant tibia on, and if you look at the shape next to the buffalo, you can see that it's the same, except that it's obviously much longer. And so this would have articulated or joined onto an elephant's femur, so that will be the thigh bone of the elephant. And we actually have one up on the top there, which because I only have 2 hands, I'm unable to retrieve it for you and show you how it would articulate with this particular bone. And then this would go onto exactly the same arrangement, this kind of fused metatarsal situation that we have there. And I just think that that's rather fantastic to know because, well, I just find it interesting. You might not, but I do. Now, the other thing I want to show you, of course, is something much smaller. If you could just zoom in there on the screen, Hoppy. If you could just, there we go, well done. Okay, now, that, everybody, is the mouth of a weevil. Now, many of you will have seen alien films before. Many of you will have watched things like District 9, where you had those prawn sort of cricket-like bipedal aliens, and their mouths looked exactly like that. And so many alien films you see have that kind of terrifying mouth on them when we see alien creatures. And it's because they do look so very terrifying. And people are so very terrified of insects. But they really are quite harmless, most of them, and they really are quite beautiful. This is a weevil. And like I said to you yesterday, he died, unfortunately, because of the cold. And then he was kind of helped along his way by Geraldine the cheesecake, who put him in the freezer. And there he has got his eyes and his beautiful mouth parts and his unbelievably detailed little carapace. I think he's a fantastic creature. Right, Brent Leo Smith is still driving along, hopefully going to find Mvula fairly soon. Let's go and find out how his search is going.
I'm heading back towards where we last left Herbert, and we're going to have another last look, but it is really difficult with all those elephants in that area. I think it might be worth popping up towards Buffelshoek again to see if there's any sign around the water. But it's been so cool today, he probably hasn't needed to drink since he drank this morning. And then we might head further to the west. Oh, hello, mister. A big male giraffe. Feeding off a buffalo thorn. You can see he's quite a dark individual. Quite an old individual. You can see that by his face. And you can see, without having to look at the obvious bits, just his size tells me that it's a male. Quite a lot taller than a female. They're actually incredible animals. So to be that size is quite a thing. Now, if we have another look at their legs, you can see how tight the skin is. Now, it's very tight like that to stop the blood flowing too fast down their legs. And also the first ever supersonic jet suits and space suits. The underside that keeps tight to your skin to help control the blood when you're traveling at those incredible speeds was designed based off the structure of a giraffe's legs and their skin.
G-force suit.
A G-force suit, thank you. Yes, I don't know the technical terms for such things. A G-force suit, there we go. Now, there are 9 different subspecies of giraffe that we know of so far, and they've all got slightly different patterns. And like most animals out here, no giraffe has the same set of blotches and splotches as the other. So if we have a quick look here, before we have a look at another giraffe. So if we have a look, there's the different sort of colorations and splotches. Here's our one here. So we're the South African, which is, you can see the range of them. And then up in northern Botswana, you get the Angolan. But in terms of how they look, very, very similar. And there's the Maasai giraffe, which is, you can see, far more intricate. And then that is the reticulated giraffe, so very distinctly different from the others. Now that's Rothschild's, and the last one is the West African giraffe. So really fascinating. So there are slight genetic differences between those giraffe species. He's still munching away happily. Now, our giraffe, the South African variation, is not endangered at all and is quite widely distributed within its home range, both in protected areas and on private reserves and private game farms. Now, the West African giraffe is under is in quite a lot of trouble. They occur through the Sahel zone, which is the savanna zone above the Central African forests. And unfortunately, a lot of the areas that they occur have been very heavily poached and war-torn for many years. And there he is, walking down the road. Now, as he walks away, he's not facing us, unfortunately, but just look at him up ahead. Now you can see those protrusions and bumps and stuff on those horns. Now James is going to show you a little bit of a much closer view of what's actually going on there.
This is my old buffalo friend here. I'm going to put him over here on the shelf next to, well, close to the head. Not the same animal, of course, or same species, but different animal. Now, we have made extensive use of this giraffe skull over the last year or so. But let's have another look at him, just because he's such a cleverly magnificent fellow. And there are two things to check here. First of all, the amazingness of the skull, just the size of it. Look, I mean, I guess you don't get the impression of the size of a giraffe skull from watching it on the screen, but I mean, this skull is the same size as my torso. So now I'm not a very big fellow, but I'm not that small. It's the same size as my torso, which I think is quite impressive, really, don't you, Jean-Andre? Yeah. Old Hoppy. And then the other thing, before we get into the detail of the skull, yesterday, or 2 days ago, sorry, we found, living in this skull, we found a little piece of wax, and into that little piece of wax went a stingless bee. And so inside the brain case of this giraffe is a small colony of stingless bees. Now, those stingless bees are going to be totally immobile in weather like this, and so I think we'll have to wait for them to heat up before they start to come out again. I noticed that the entrance is actually closed now, but that tiny little drop of wax there was made by a stingless bee, and they do make honey, and they'll probably make honey inside this giraffe when there's some pollen for them to collect and nectar from the flowers, but until then they'll probably just stay safe and sort of dormant almost within the brain case of this giraffe. And for insects that are able to find a home like that, then that's what they'll do. But many, like I explained to you earlier, will just sort of die, and their eggs will survive over the winter time, and then they'll hatch during the summer. And just a quick one on the front of the skull here. Now, we know that giraffe skulls calcify. So there you can see a calcification bump. This whole bump here is from fighting. And in much the same way as rugby players and gridiron football players have thickening of the skull from continual bashing, so the giraffe's skull starts to calcify. And you saw on that giraffe that Brent was looking at, you could see that it had, the skin was broken, and it's this calcified lump that's growing through the skin there. And that doesn't form unless there's been repeated concussions to the head. Then the other thing, of course, is this thing called an ossicone. And an ossicone is a fancy way of saying horn, except that it isn't a horn. And there are actually 4 different kinds of sort of head protuberances, if you like. Don't you like that word, John? Protuberance? Yes. Try and say it. Protuberance. You see, he can't say it. He said protuberance. I'll teach him when we're off air. So 4 kinds of different protuberances that come out of an animal's head. And they are all different families of animals. So the one family is the cervids, those are the deer, they have antlers. Then we have the Giraffidae, which have these ossicones. And then we, of course, have the vast family of bovids, which have horns, many of which I've showed you, which are bony like this, but they've got that keratin sheath on them. And then, of course, we have a family all on its own called the pronghorn antelope of North America. They only occur there, and their horns are slightly different, and they are bony, but they're a bit like these ossicones. The only 2 animals in the world that have ossicones are the giraffe and the okapi. And the okapi, of course, a close relative of the giraffe that lives in the basin of the Congo, so in the forests there. Now you can see here that it is growing continuously. It starts off very skinny, it starts off unfused with the skull, and it is a sort of cartilaginous join onto the top of the skull that gets thicker and thicker and thicker as the giraffe ages. And you can see, we can actually break off a piece here. You can see these little pieces breaking off. And that's where all the osteoblasts and osteocytes and the other bits and pieces of microbiology, I suppose, would be. Now we'll have a closer look. I'm just going to extend the size. Excuse me, Jean-Andre. Let's have a look here. Now what we'll do is just sort of put the microscope over the skull. There we go. Look at that. There we go, Hoppy. How's that? Look at that, everyone. Those are the different layers. Looks like marble, doesn't it? I think that's rather amazing. So those are the different layers that are getting put down all the time. The reason it looks so flaky like that is, of course, because it's being layered continuously. That is amazing. And you know what? Inside every one of these little crevices, there's something potentially living. I think that's amazing. Now, we had a question also about the gecko that we found inside the buffalo skull yesterday. I haven't looked. I'm prepared to look. So let's just see if we can't find him. First thing I'm going to get, however, is my light, which seems to have been stolen from me. No, it hasn't. Here it is. I have my light. So let's get the light and let's get the buffalo skull. And I'm to retrieve it very carefully because our gecko is living in the brain case with his 2 eggs. He's got 2 eggs inside the brain case of this buffalo. Now, Hoppy, I think you're going to have to show us via the microscope. No, you're definitely going to have to show us via the microscope. So we put this into the skull, and then we shine the light. And okay, now I should be able to focus this now. There we go. So let's just look. There are the eggs. Focus. Sorry, Hoppy, I will focus it eventually. There we go. Focus on the eggs. Those are the 2 gecko eggs. Now, let's find out if Mr. and Mrs. It must be Mrs. Gecko, is out hunting, or if she's actually in here. So those haven't hatched yet. There's the remains of a daddy long-legged spider that probably spent, oh, that's amazing. Look at that. It probably spent much of the summer here. I think that's dead. It looks like it's just the exoskeleton. That's fantastic. Now, I'll just see if I can't find the gecko. Well, while I do that, everybody, you're going to get a bit seasick looking at that image. I'll see if I can find the gecko in here, the adult. While I'm doing that, Leo Smith is driving up a hill with that rather strange headdress that he has on the top of his bonce.
James, commenting on my mane, because I still have one. Blows in the wind. We think that male leopard's being chased properly by those elephants that move through that area later in the day. So we're going to hope that we find his tracks tomorrow morning, or maybe he might pop out this evening. We just got a report that one of those lionesses that's been separated from the Nkomo pride is showing suckle marks, was seen during the day, not too far from the camp, and she was displaying like she might have a den close by. We're just going to have a quick look in that area, see what's going on around there. It's right on our boundary, so we're going to head up towards the Buffelshoek boundary, our northern boundary, and then head to the west. Unfortunately, those elephants marched straight through and out. After chasing the leopard, of course. The wonderful thing about being out here is we're constantly learning. And Natasha's wondering, what is the most important thing I've learnt from all the big cats, or any animal for that matter? Natasha, it would have to be patience. You know, some can be incredibly patient. I sometimes am not. So I'd probably say it's patience. Strangely enough, I have a lot of patience when I'm in the bush, or tracking, or sitting with a sleeping kitty cat. But outside of that and fishing, patience is probably not one of my strong points. So I'd probably say patience is the most important thing I've learned. And I'm pretty sure most James and Jamie and everyone can attest to my lack of patience. And you don't only learn from the animals out here, you learn from the people. We've got such an amazing group of people. So it is an incredible experience. And I think one of the things that everyone can learn wherever you are in the world is to just be open to learning. You can never know enough. Catherine has asked, or read actually, that Juma means the lion's roar. Is this true? As far as my understanding, it's not the lion's roar, but it's a contact call between lions. That sort of, rather than that full-blown roar. But that is what my understanding is, chatting to the guys out here. So it is a lion call, but not the deep roar. Yeah, I'm just listening to the game drive, see what's going on. So the other 3 Nkuhuma ladies, the ones that are still together, so it probably means that young female managed to skedaddle away from the male, because there's the 2 lionesses, or actually maybe the lioness with cubs from Torchwood could be there as well. But they've caught a waterbuck sometime during the day, just to the east of our boundary. So they're probably not going to be around unless the Birmingham boys come in and take the lion's share. So we're going to check for this female who's possibly got a den in this drainage system up ahead over this hill here. Now, VM and I were walking in this system looking for her a couple of days ago and stumbled upon a hippo sleeping under a bush. And Herbert was following leopard tracks in the same area this morning and stumbled on, which I'm pretty sure is the same hippo, sleeping under a different bush. I'm sure these are those leopard tracks from this morning. This is where Mvula came from. Oh, the light's quite difficult at the moment. And he's just walked along the edge here. There we go. You can't really see them. Very difficult light, even if I throw some light onto it. But yeah, that's where he came from this morning. So I'm going to start slowing down and checking quite carefully now as we head over the ridge towards where that lioness was spotted in the middle of the day. So while we carefully check for any sign of that Nkuhuma lioness, fingers crossed we might be able to find the den and get the first view of those cubs. Let's go see James, who's going to be talking about armoured plating.
I am going to attempt to talk about armoured plating once I've turned my own voice off. There we go. Sorry about that, everybody. Still getting used to the technical difficulties of the tent. Now, here is a tortoise shell, obviously. Can you see the tortoise shell, Hoppy? Well done. Now, the interesting thing about a tortoise, of course, is the fact that these scoots indicate not so much its age, but the times of its life that it's had. So if I take out a piece of this grass and then use it as a pointer, because I'm so inefficient that I don't have a pointing pencil or something, what you can see is that these are periods of growth. Each ring, much like the ring on a tree, is a period of growth that the tortoise has experienced. Now, what is interesting to me is that it doesn't happen on a yearly basis like it does with a tree. It happens during times when nutrition is good, and sometimes when nutrition is bad, then the tortoise hardly grows at all. So you can see here, you see this particularly fat line there. You see that, Hoppy? Yeah. That particularly fat line there, oh dear, is that fat line indicates that this tortoise had a very good time then, and it was perhaps, I don't know how old this thing is, but there was probably quite a lot of rain and therefore quite a lot for the tortoise to eat, and so it grew quite rapidly. That was followed shortly thereafter by a particularly bad year, that last little bit there, where the tortoise hardly grew at all. Now I think that's absolutely incredible. And we'll just have a quick look under the microscope as to exactly what these scoots look like. These are called scoots, by the way, and they come off. They're made largely, sorry, Jean-Andre. Let's do that first. There the scoots are. There we go. Isn't that amazing? So even in finer detail than what I was showing you, you can see the periods of good growth to the left-hand side of the screen, and then towards the center, very poor growth, and then back towards the right, also pretty poor growth. So a couple of rough years this tortoise has experienced. I think that's fantastic to see. All right, Jean-Andre. And the last thing I just want to show you about this particular tortoise. And here, I'm going to actually break this off. This is a scoot. Okay, now when we talk about scoots, that's what we talk about. It's this kind of shell covering, which I think is quite nice. And Louise, you want to know, if you kept a tortoise as a pet, would these sort of scoots grow equally? Would the rings be more equal? I imagine they would. Yeah, probably a lot more equal than they would be here. We've got another one here which doesn't have, it's only got one scoot left on it. And this one, actually, quite interestingly, I think, seems to have had a slightly tougher life. Very, very thin lines of growth, very few fat lines of growth. So I imagine that were you to have a pet tortoise and were you to feed it consistently and not starve it too much or go away on holiday and forget to give it something to eat as when you were gone, it would probably have scoots that were exactly sort of symmetrical, if you like. And, I mean, a tortoise doesn't have to eat all the time because it's a reptile. It does not maintain its own body temperature. It's poikilothermic, which means that it must retrieve, or it must sort of derive its temperature, some buffalo. It must derive its temperature from the outside. And so they can go into a kind of state of dormancy, which they will do during the winter time. And then they won't grow at all. Hoppy, are you able to come out here briefly? Just want to show you some buffalo walking across. They've obviously now hidden themselves behind a bushel. But I think they're about... Did you see? There they are. They're just coming out there. And that's just to show, of course, that our little office here is in the wild, and it's so wonderful to be able to do what we're doing here and be inside and outside at the same time, of course. You don't have to be outside too much. Oh, there are baboons shouting. I'm not a baboon. Anyway, those are the buffalo. Where those lions went, we're not sure where the lionesses are. They could well be in that rather difficult block over there. And it's difficult because there are a lot of drainage lines and things in it. In fact, I think while you're next with Brent, I'm going to draw a diagram for you of exactly how the drainage line system works here. Okay, well, Brent is off the vehicle, so I'm going to just draw it for you while we're live. Come on, Hoppy. Let us put up our easel. Let's just give Hoppy a bit of time to get back into the tent, of course. He is virtually crippled. Is that okay for you? One day he's just going to reach round and bludgeon me from the other end of this. I wouldn't blame him. All right, so here's the eastern edge of Djuma. east. Here's the northern boundary, which sort of goes in that direction like that. So I'm talking absolute rubbish. That's the western end of Djuma. There's the eastern end of Djuma, and there's the south. There we go. Now, the major drainage line that goes through Djuma, everybody, is called the Great Mulwati River, which flows once every 1,000 years or so. Probably not quite that infrequently, but it doesn't flow very often. Now, flowing into that and joining at where I'm sure you've heard us talk about Nyala roads, south and north, somewhere around there is where this other drainage line joins. And that drainage line leads, of course, into Djuma Dam. Look at my dam, Jandre, you see that? Here's Djuma Pan. Here are the lodges. There's Vuyatela and there's Galago. And this is fed in turn by a drainage line that splits many times. And when I talk about that difficult block, what I mean is this area here. And we found many animals in there on foot. We've had some wonderful times in there on foot. And it's almost like a little wilderness block on Djuma where we don't see, there are no roads in there at all. And so it's very difficult to access in a vehicle. And it's just really nice to go in there and have a look. And I'll just give you a quick idea. The Mvubu Road runs like this. I'll indicate a road actually. We will get different colored pens as we go along. But that's a road. That's Mvubu Road. And many of you will have heard us talk about Mvubu Road. Vuyatela Access Road goes off there like that to the entrance. This is of course not to scale because I have no sense of proportion. And that there is Galago Shortcut, and that would be Aubrey's Road there. And Galago Shortcut, of course, is where we had that wonderful hyena den with the scotia tree on it, and it was over here, round about there. And I'll just quickly draw the scotia tree, of course, which was very wonderful, under which, of course, were a few of these hyenas. This one is particularly being territorial. You can see its tail is up at the moment. Right. I think all right, sorry about that. You know what else I'm going to show you? We were just waiting. Brenty's frantically trying to track something for you to see. Jamie's down. So let me draw you another diagram. It won't be quite as comedic as this one. But what I want to show you is where all the hyena dens are. And now where our beloved hyenas who have really irritatingly gone off to live at Simbambili. I know they'll be back at some stage. But I know, I'm hoping they're going to be back. What was that, Kirsten? You said we can go back to Brent. Okay. Well, let's do the hyenas first quickly because I know that you're fascinated. It's like, it must be so amazing to watch someone so skilled draw. Is it, John Ray? Do you find it incredible to watch? Do you feel honoured?
Yes.
There we have Djuma again. Look how fast I'm doing it this time. There we have Simbambalai. And there we have Arathusa. Okay, I'm just going to put Ara, and I'm going to put Sim, and we'll write the full Djuma there, of course. Right, Beefle's Hook. Okay, and T-Wood. B Hook. Wonderful. I like the mixture of high uppercase and lowercase letters. That's excellent. Okay, so we had here. I'm going to rub that out. We had the hyena den on Galago Shortcut over there. Well, the road does that. Then we had Aubrey's Road here, and we've got the main road that goes like that. Aubrey's Road den was right near the boundary of Biffles Hook. And you can see there how close it is to the boundary of Simbambili. Sydney's Dam, which is obviously a large dam, is over there. And I'm just going to quickly draw you Djuma Dam, which of course is over here. Now, between these two dams, there are, and as they've got drier and drier, of course, there's a little bit of water here. As they've got drier and drier, so the game paths are formed between the two. And both of these den sites, the Galago Shortcut one and the Aubrey's Road one were basically on major game highways. And so the lions used to come knocking up between here and between Sydney's Dam looking for things. And I think that's why they've moved across here onto Simbambili and they've built themselves another home there. And I'll just quickly draw you a cub. There we go. There is a hyena cub. I think that's D1 actually. D1, that's where they live now. Right, Zoe, thank you. You say you'd like to play Pictionary with me one day. You would almost certainly lose, and I'd have to apologise to you. Let's go across to Brent Leo Smith, who seems to have muffled his face with a very colourful scarf.
It's cold. So we did a quick little walk around where that lioness was last seen. Unfortunately, it looks like she hasn't come back towards Djuma. And we're going to go now check towards Sydney's waterhole. There might be something there. Yeah, well, there's lion tracks to the left, well spotted. Let's have a quick look. Going towards Sydney's. Oh, very interesting. So VM's got some tracks there going down. As I said, this light, unfortunately, is really, there we go. We can see them quite clearly now. And those weren't there this morning. So definitely worth going to have a look. But I think we're going to check the waterhole first. I'm just going to let these gentlemen pass. Now, maybe they might have moved down towards the waterhole. Also, there's that big herd of buffalo around Zoe's Road. It looks like a male there. So it could be that one Birmingham we saw yesterday evening. And he crossed into the north. So he might have come back. Oh, he's come back. He just went for a scent mark. He's walking down the side of the road here. Fingers crossed, there's a lion. So before we went into Imvula, oh, look at that. Isn't that absolutely gorgeous? That tiny little hole in the grey, dreary sky. And this angelic light bursting through it. I think that deserves a photograph. I hope you guys are getting some screenshots of it. Absolutely stunning. The only bit of light we've seen this whole sunset safari. We're going to keep following these lion tracks. Hopefully we can follow them all the way to fruition. But we're going to go to James, who's got something at the Djuma waterhole camp.
There, everybody, is a diagram of what we're about to show you at the Djuma waterhole. Take a look at this. Take a look at this. There we go. Ah, this is unbelievable. There was a hippo right there, everyone, but there is no longer a hippo over there. So let us observe the hippopotamus that I have drawn for you. A number of amazing features, of course. The most important being that the nose of the hippopotamus, the eyes, and the ears are on the same plane, which means that if the hippo is lying under the water, let us pretend that that is the water's surface there, H2O, you can see that it's, while it's I'm sorry. Well, while its head, while its head, while its body is under the water here, So, this is seriously, I mean, I'm genuinely trying to show you something here. Its nose, its eyes and its ears are out of the water while it's standing on the river floor like this. And they normally are not swimming there, standing on the floor here. And of course also on the floor you might find a couple of fish and maybe a frog. Right, there we go. And a terrapin. I forgot about the terrapin. But the terrapin would be sitting over here. There we go. Basking in the sun. And that is how the life of the hippopotamus goes. I can but apologize for that. Brenty is trying desperately to find something in animal form out there. So let's have another serious biological discussion. And what we're going to look at now is a scorpion. Okay. I became slightly hysterical there, you may have noticed. Right, now what we have here, remember I described yesterday how most invertebrates have what we call, well, all invertebrates, of course, without an internal skeleton are unable to grow from within. So they've got to grow and then crawl out of their skins as they grow. And this unbelievable scorpion thing here, let me just revitalize the microscope. We'll have a look at it first without the microscope. There is an immature scorpion exoskeleton. So this is a particularly venomous scorpion, it was, or probably still is. They're quite long-lived. And this one came out of its exoskeleton a while back and just deposited this almost completely perfectly. It would have basically crawled out where the mouth is, crawled out the front and wandered off. Now, the reason I say it was venomous, of course, is because the pincers are so much smaller than the tail. So it's probably what we call a parabuthus. It's very difficult to tell what scorpion it is from looking at it. But let's go, what I'm going to try and do is just zoom into the sting here. There we go. Sorry, Hoppy, I'm right in your way there. How's that? Let me just, ooh, there we go. Look how, that sting there, look how sharp it is. Isn't that amazing? And it would go straight into my hand very quickly. Now just beneath the sort of sharp end of the wedge, if you like, or the thick end, the sharp end of the sting is a poison gland. So that first sort of thick fat bit there that you can see is the gland in which the venom is kept, and that venom, of course, on a scorpion like this would cause some damage. And I think you'd probably find that it showed neurological or neurotoxic effects. There we go. And you can even see, astoundingly, some of those trichobothria. Those are those hairs. And those hairs there, of course, as Stefan mentioned the other day, when he found a living scorpion as opposed to just the shell of one, are very sensitive nerves. And they will be able to sense the slightest movement in the air, and that will make the stinger extremely accurate. So although the scorpion cannot see what it's stinging, those incredibly sensitive trichobothria will allow it to feel where the sting is moving through the air and be very accurate in putting that nasty, nasty sting into whatever happened to be causing it offense at the time. Let's go back across to Brent and find out what he has to tell you.
I thought I had a long distance visual of something big, possibly an elephant crossing the road, just very briefly. So I'm going to head down in that area. Now, Shadow and her cub were last also seen in this area, and they haven't been found again today. So we're just having a quick look here along the western edge of our traverse to see if we get any luck. It's quite chilly and getting chillier. I think it's nearly time for the warm gloves. I'm not even going with the not so warm gloves, going straight for the warm gloves this evening. was that? That was a very funny looking little creature that just moved from the road. It could have been a duiker. Ah, it was a duiker. There we go. Just, it's going to disappear. She's just behind this termite mound. Oh, little boy. Oh, don't run away, mister. Keep still. There we go. They're so hard to often get because they do just disappear. A little male duiker. There we go. Now, interestingly enough, duikers are one of the only antelope species that has regularly been recorded eating meat, even hunting baby ground birds. So quite strange. Even the duiker we get here, which is the grey duiker or the Grimm's bush duiker. Now, the duiker species further. Oh, there, is that an elephant? I think I see an elephant. I can't see. There's something large. I'm hoping it's some ellies. Trying to see what. Okay. Now, it's often very obvious that elephants are left or right tusks. I mean, they predominantly use one or the other. Paul's wondering, will antelope do the same? Well, no, not really, Paul. An antelope, those horns are almost there exclusively for fighting. They don't really use them for feeding too much. Except for eland, I have seen eland use their horns to break branches to feed on them. But again, I don't think they would specifically choose a horn. Yay, ellies! You've got to be very cautious around elephants in weather like this. They tend to be a lot more nervous and sometimes quite a bit more aggressive when there is strong winds about. This looks like quite a nice breeding herd, and their body language is great, nice and relaxed. And then we were just talking about left and right tusks, so she's right tusked. Oh, look at the little ones behind her. There we go. They look like they're up to mischief. They might be enjoying the cool weather for games. Not obviously as focused on feeding as the older ones, as they're relying almost exclusively on mother's milk at the moment. So yes, game time. Let's play, jump on each other. Isn't that cute? Oh, right, still out of the way, adolescent. Oh. It's jumping right onto the other one's back. Unfortunately, let me just try and move. Oh, moving trees. Having a grand old time. They should move the way back towards us. There we go. Now at that age, there's no dominance really in that display. It's just playing. What are you up to now, mister? Look at them. What are these two up to? They definitely look like they're about to play. Two little partners in crime. Now when you have different aged elephants that want to play, quite often the older one will take a submissive stance, sort of try to get itself lower to entice the small individual to play with them. But in this case, they look very similar aged, so there's no need for that. Well, they are slowly moving into a thicket. And I said you've got to be extra careful with elephants in windy weather. They can be a little bit tempestuous. Oh, the babies are back there. Let me go forward slightly. There we go. Oh, there we go. Trouble 1 and trouble 2. Both of them are a year old, under a year old. Quite mastered the use of the trunk yet. You can see how they are a little bit clumsy. Look at him, they're trying to climb and balance on top of that termite mound. It doesn't look like they've managed to master the control of their feet yet either. Little head shake. Oh, he's having a scratch. A scratch, an itchy spot on his foot. I wonder if that's an active termite mound and they're attracted by the heat, more not because they'd get cold, but more from a curiosity point of view. So they're going to move off into the thickets, and I said with this cold and windy weather, we're not going to push them at all. D. Beg's wondering, are young animals taught what to eat, or is it trial and error? Well, I think a lot of it is residual instinctual knowledge. So the same reason or the same way that someone who's never seen a snake knows nothing about snakes, even as a small child, is immediately scared of a snake. So I think that's some of that, a lot of that will probably be instinctual knowledge. And I think the stuff that tastes bad tastes really bad out, yeah? So it'll be interesting to know. I don't know if it's taught. I personally don't think so. I mean, they do learn in certain areas, because you must remember that man has spread lots of trees that are not supposed to be, or weren't indigenously occurring, like fruit trees. And elephants know that those taste good, and probably a sense of smell, their acute sense of smell will also help them with that. Just one sub-adult left at the back in the thicket, still feeding. The rest are moving through up this little river system. Now, we've talked about how you've got to be a little bit more cautious of elephants when the wind is gusty and strong like this. But this herd has shown us no signs of any aggression. I'm just going to see if we can move a little bit to see if we can get a better view. But unfortunately, they are going to a very thick area. I think we've got one last little view through the gap there. So we'll take you into that last little view of a grey shape behind a bush. But James wants to show you a little bit of what happens behind the scenes in the fireside chat setup.
Behind the fireside chat, a lot happens. Now, this is the third cameraman for the day. You'll notice the angle is slightly different. It's because David is back from leave. Welcome back, David.
Thank you, James.
It's wonderful to have you with us. Now, let's just do a little about turn. Come outside, everybody. And you don't get to see Fireside Chat from this angle. Lurking in the shadows is Brian Joubert. Hello. There we go. And lurking also in the shadows is Jamie Patterson. She's preparing herself, putting a different earpiece on, getting herself ready, while Brent, of course, is alone in the wilderness. So just an idea of what goes on here. There's Eugene, of course. Hello, Eugene. Hello. There we go. Now, so we have to have two lights. If Hoppy Longstockings is doing things, we have to have about 70,000 lights there. He is out there trying to light the wilderness like some sort of ancient god. I'm not sure why he's doing that, but it will presumably have some sort of interesting effect during the course of the Fireside Chat. Then we're going to have two cameras today. One for wide and one for close. One will be operated by Brian, correctly, Brian? Yes, that's true. And the other by David, if I'm not mistaken. Indeed. David straight back into it. And of course, there is the fire that will be blowing smoke straight into their faces. And so when you hear coughing and see shaking of the picture, it will be because the cameramen are being asphyxiated. We, of course, have insisted that we sit the other side today because, well, it's just more comfortable and less smoky. Now, remember, the Fireside Chat today is going to be looking largely at cubs, so there will be a cuteness overload, and there will also, of course, be a discussion on, well, sorry, not a discussion, it will be on Facebook Live. So don't keep watching this stream, you must go across to the Facebook, I think it's the SafariLIVE Facebook page, and you'll be able to watch us there for the last 15 minutes of the drive. Let's head back across to Brent, find out what he's doing, and preparations will here continue.
We meandered probably another 100 meters and we've come across another herd of ellies, and they're a little bit more in the open, so let's have a look at them. Hello, elephants. See, there's a slightly more alert stance now, but now she's decided that we're not actually posing any threat to her, so back down to the more relaxed stance. Vim, you're being snuck up on behind you. See that? Oh. There we go. There we go. Vim was being snuck up on. Well, and as soon as he realized, I think he was caught, he disappeared. Hello. There we go. There's another sneaky elephant. Little monsters. Yeah, quite a lot of communication. And those trumpets. I'm just going to reverse slightly. Now, very important, let the vehicle run for a few seconds. If any of you are ever planning on doing a self-drive to the Kruger National Park, very important to understand just a little bit about elephant behavior. So it's always good when you switch, after you've switched off your car, you switch it on, let it run for a few seconds before you move. It gives the animals a chance to sort of get used to it. Also makes them realize that you're not a threat. So if you immediately start moving and making loud noises, and just think an engine revving could be misconstrued. Here we go. Hello, Mr. Naughty. Yes, you're very scary. Now, again, in a herd that's not relaxed, a young one behaving like that can make the whole herd become very aggressive or uncomfortable. But if we go a little bit, look at this here. We're getting chased. This is just games from the little ones. But see, as you go wider, you see there's a big female off to the left, and her tail is completely down, hanging loose, so she's not upset at all. This one, you can see how, there we go, that tail extended like that. In this circumstance is a bit of a game, but in other circumstances, that would, on a big elephant cow, that would be a warning sign for you to keep your distance. Now, if you're not sure, rather keep a little bit more distance. Of course, we often get very close to the eddies, but we've all been doing this a long time and have spent a lot of time in the bush. And most of the time, elephants are not going to be aggressive or a problem towards you if you treat them with the right amount of respect and give them the space when they tell you to. And they obviously can't say, hey, you, please give me space, but they do that with their body language. And it's quite easy to tell. And if you're unsure, as I say, rather just give them a little bit of space. Hey, naughty. Now, of course, I'm bundled up in all forms of warm things. And Mike's wondering, do elephants feel the cold? I'd say probably they do, but sorry, I saw something run across the road in the distance, but it was a warthog. I got very excited. It looked sort of the right sort of size for a predator. And there's also a lone wildebeest under the power lines there. That's very late for a warthog. They should be in bed by now. Otherwise, they might become dinner. I'm going to try and swing us around a bit again, these ellies. How's that going? I've been in the bush the majority of my life. I've been very, very lucky with the upbringing I've had and the opportunities and things and experiences I've had from a very young age. And Zoe's asking me, at what age did I see my first elephant and do I remember it? Well, I probably don't remember my first elephant sighting, but I do remember my first elephant on foot sighting. It's my earliest memory, strangely enough. It's my first memory. My family, my grandparents, my parents and friends were up in northern Botswana on a big camping trip through the Okavango Delta. And they stopped at one of those magnificent big Mopani pans around in Moremi Game Reserve. And they stopped there to have a sundowner. And while they were having a sort of sundowner, about to cross the road, me being me, I managed to do a disappearing act. I was probably about 2 years old, or maybe just a little bit younger. I think I had my second birthday on that trip. And suddenly, when my father looked up, I was standing no more than about 4 or 5 meters, maybe even a bit closer, to a massive elephant bull. And I was talking to him. And he was just keeping dead still, and I was obviously speaking gibberish to him. My dad managed to walk up very, very carefully and pick me up and then walk away. And that Ellie bull shook his head at us a bit, and he didn't actually become aggressive. He was just sort of more shocked than anything. And I got a hiding, and the elephant bull got a big thank you from the rest of the family. That's my first memory as a child, and I suppose sort of destined to spend the rest of my life in the bush after that. So there we go, Zoe. That's my first elephant memory, and it's also my first memory. Oh, more ellies. There's quite a large group of them around here. Now, of course, elephants are the heaviest creature we have out here. Chitra is wondering, can a termite mound take the weight of an elephant? Well, Chitra, it all depends on the termite mound, but the big fungus-growing termite mounds most definitely can. They might break some of the chimneys and things like that, but the termite mound itself will be completely safe. I think maybe some of the top halves of the smaller black mound termites might not be strong enough, but definitely majority of the termite mounds here will be able to take the weight of an adult elephant bull, let alone a cow. It's so peaceful just sitting with the ellies as they feed. Now we're watching them, been watching them feed quite a lot recently, and what's amazing me is that the diverse amount of species that the elephants are feeding off at the moment. We counted one young ellie bull. I think he ate 6 different tree species and a vine in the space of about 6 minutes. So with this drought, they're definitely going to expand their feeding habits. And in a lot of cases, they'll feed on plants that if they had a choice, if it had been a good rain year, they probably wouldn't feed on. Oh, that sounded like a massive tree being pushed. And it sounds like there's some more maybe towards Impala Plain. So they could be out in a slightly more open area. So let's go have a look. Big SafariLIVE welcome to Khan in Toronto. And Khan's wondering, why do we turn off our engine whenever we stop to look at an animal? Well, firstly, Khan, it's just a lot more pleasant rather than having the noise of an engine going, to just enjoy the sounds of the bush around us. And that's pretty much the main reason we switch off our engines. It's to stop that distracting noise of the car, and so we can really experience that animal we're looking at. I can't wait for the day that we're going to have electric vehicles that are functional out in the bush, because we're going to be able to drive around so quietly. Now that does also come with a little bit of a problem. So, of course, in these vehicles, the elephants can hear us coming, so they sort of have an idea we're on our way. But if you're in a quiet electric vehicle, you might give them a fright. But I think they will get used to it, and I think they'll pick up on the sound of the tires. So of course, being out in the bush and going out twice a day, every day, is hard on our poor vehicles, and we've had a few vehicle problems of late, and James thinks he spotted something. There were male leopard tracks here yesterday, and Kathy's wanting just a quick update on what's happening with the vehicles. Of course, I'm out in the rust bucket, or rusty, and Jamie was out in the, I think they're calling it the boat at the moment, which is a quick modified vehicle, which is not our normal vehicle. Wendy has had a constant problem with her starter motor recently, and we haven't been able to diagnose and fix it properly down here, so we popped her on a trailer with a jigger and sent her off to Johannesburg, or to Pretoria, about 500 kilometers away, to Land Rover experts to try and fix her. And jigger's a bit more terminal, and we're not quite sure what happened, but there seems to be a problem with the engine itself. So they are also on the same trailer. They sent, hello little one. I love little elephants. So before I carry on with this little Ellie, so both Wendy and Jigger have gone to the dock and will hopefully be back this week at some point, and hopefully spick and span. Oh, look at him go. We're being stalked. Just a quick reminder There's only an hour sunrise safari tomorrow because we start our preparations for the Father's Day TV shows, and that'll be over next weekend. But so only 1 hour tomorrow morning. And also remember, Facebook will be where Fireside Chat is, on the Safari Live Facebook page. And remember, you don't actually have to be a member of Facebook to watch it. And you just open up Facebook, type in Safari Live, and you should have, or you will have access to our page. Now, as these Ellies move across, I'm going to start making my way towards the fireside. And I'm going to be quite happy sitting next to the fire. It'll be nice and warm. I might actually climb into the fire. But it's also getting a bit dark, and some elephants don't like lights, so we're just going to leave them be. Hopefully we don't have too many elephant traffic jams on the way to Fireside Chat. We do have those from time to time. Unlike the big cities, our traffic jams even happen on a Sunday night. Now it's just getting dark enough now that we're going to pop out our spotlight and hope we can find a little nocturnal critter, like a bush baby I'm hoping for. Well, as you can see, I'm decked out in all my winter gear. Andrew from Florida, very sensible to live in Florida, Andrew. Very nice climate. I do approve of the Florida climate, nice and warm. Andrew's coming out in September to visit Kruger and is wondering, is it going to be chilly in the mornings and evenings? Andrew, it will be a little bit chilly, but not nearly to the degree it is now. You probably, I'm going to try to do the conversions for you. Early morning, probably be around 50 to 65 in that region, and getting upwards of 90, maybe even a little bit higher towards the end of September during the day. And then again in the evenings, it'll get a bit nippy towards the end, but no need to have 3-4 layers like we've got on at the moment. So you might have noticed a little impala scutter past me, and I turned my lights off. Now, we don't shine our spotlights on any of the diurnal animals. That's impala, zebra, giraffe, things like that. And we don't want to blind them. And it doesn't blind them for very long, but it could give a predator the potential chance of being able to catch them a little bit more easily. And we are here to observe, not to interfere in what happens. So we don't want to be on the predator or the prey's side. We just want to watch nature take place. I'm really hoping this cold front blows off overnight, because I mean it's cold enough without it being windy and cold as well. So even though the temperatures haven't been as low as we've had, it just doesn't seem to get warm at all. It's been definitely blanket weather is what I call this. A good book and a blanket and a cup of tea. Although Jamie kindly made me hot chocolate for my drive today, but I've finished it very quickly. We're going to start making our way towards the Fireside Chat where James and Jamie are, just another quick reminder, it is on Facebook Live, on the SafariLIVE Facebook page. You can catch us there, talking about the ongoings of the week, what's been seen, what's new, what's cracking, and I'm sure good old Jamesy has got a little sing-along for you at the end. Fortunately, he's back because you really don't want Jamie or I to sing. We talk quite a lot about, or we speculate is probably the best way to describe this, about what the different animal vocalizations mean. And Tony, old boy fish, would like to know, if I could talk to any animal out here, what would it be? Now that's quite a difficult one. I think, yeah, Vim's like me, I want to answer that question, so I'll let Vim go first.
Turtle dove.
Vim would like to talk to the turtle dove. Why the turtle dove?
They'll know all the secrets everywhere.
But they're very stupid. So they'll just probably go turtle dove, turtle dove, turtle dove, turtle dove. Now I think I'd like to talk to the elephants. Now they also see everything, but they also smell everything. So, oh no, I smelt a lion over there. I smelt a leopard. Oh, I chased a leopard over there. But also, I think an elephant would be a very interesting conversation. I think the turtle dove would probably be a bit like Dory from the Finding Nemo. Very forgetful. So even if they saw something, they go, oh, leopard. Oh, grass. Oh, bug. And Herbert's on the back here as well. Herbert, what animal would you like to talk to?
Drongo.
A fork-tailed drongo. That's actually quite an interesting one. The toughest little bird in the bush. It attacks everyone and everything. I've even seen them dive bomb a leopard before. Oh, that's a very interesting question. I think elephants, initially, I went with lions, but I think lions, I think I got the lions back.